out, what we're going to do is hear from each of them, and then I'm going to lead a discussion, and we're going to have that discussion move into interactivity with all of you involved. And then we're going to hear from Ralph Kavanaugh. Let me tell you who is here in front of you. In fact, the people you see in front of you are going to be talking in the order you see them. To my immediate left here, this has nothing to do with politics, is Henry Gardner, who's Executive Director of ABAG, the Association of Area Governments. And as we move down the panel, we have Arthur Jensen, who's General Manager of Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency. Henry will be talking about transportation and urban development, and Arthur about water supply and demand. And then Amy Bach, who is the Executive Director of United Policyholders, will be talking about risk management for businesses and cities. And Hal LaFlash, who is going to be talking about electricity supply and demand. He's Director of Emerging Clean Technology Policy with PG&E, with Pacific Gas and Electric. So, without any further ado, I'd like you to give a warm welcome to Henry Gardner. Before you do, though, let me just give you a little bit of background about Henry. As I said, he's Executive Director of ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments. And they're the official council of governments that represents the Bay Area's 9 counties and 101 cities. And he's been at this post as head of ABAG since December 2004. He's an award-winning professional with more than 3 decades of experience in public service, and began his career in Oakland. In fact, Henry and I go way back to when he was assistant city manager of Oakland, a city now that longs for strong executive leadership like the kind that Henry represents. Would you please give a warm welcome to Henry Gardner?
Thank you, Michael. When I arrived this afternoon, they asked for my name, and found it. The lady said, how do you plan to pay? And I said, I don't. I'm so glad that Evelyn went first, because after I realized that some of you had to pay, I wanted to make sure you weren't asking for a refund by the time I finished my comments. Well, I want to start by telling you what we at ABAG foresee in 2035. Now, your program talks about 2030. We're more realistic, so we added another 5 years. Our projections for 2035 actually is tied to the Regional Transportation Plan, and that year comes from one that really is prescribed by the federal government. But anyway, it gives us another 5 years to talk about what our vision is for the future. And this is not ABAG's vision. This is the vision of the people around the 9 area counties which we started some 7+ years ago. And it comes from a project that ABAG and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Air District sponsored together, which was visioning the future of the region. And more recently, through a blueprint grant, we're calling it, that we received from the state, we've been working with our regional partners and with city councils and planning directors and city managers and nonprofit organizations to talk about this collective view and collective vision. So, in 2035, what we hope will happen here in the Bay Area is that we will see that we have made major progress in reducing greenhouse gases. That there will be higher density housing, closer to transit and closer to job centers. That we will have more and improved public transit. That there will be a major reduction in all energy uses, not just automobiles. And that we will have preserved open space and protected valuable agricultural lands. We hope that that's what we will see in 2035. I want to do what some of the great speakers do, and that is to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then tell you, and then tell you what I told you. So I'm starting that way. And what will it take to achieve this? And I want you to remember this, and it's what we run away from. It will require money. Lots of it. Lots of it. It will require political will. And that means for elected officials and appointed officials that we do have to stand up and tell the public that if we want this vision, this is what we have to do. And yes, we understand that you're concerned about traffic, you're concerned about noise, you're concerned about low and moderate income housing. But we have to identify the appropriate places for that to happen. And we have to be able to say that and be persuasive in saying that. It will require public support. And what I call it is the Madison Street marketing. We're going to really have to go out and tell people what it is that they told us and how that happens. And so, our what if alternative growth scenarios is based in a document that is called Projections 2009. That document is now currently out. And it lays out a number of scenarios. The first, though, is talking about transportation and land use and how those affect climate change. We have to reduce our carbon footprint. We're 3 times the world average. Well, in one way we can excuse ourselves by saying that we have so much wealth, we use all this energy, we have all this convenience, but we can't continue that. I told my son that, well, he was telling me about his carbon footprint. Children have carbon footprints, and I'll tell you what they are. He used to have me drive him to the donut shop, which is 3/4 of a mile away in an SUV. He's been riding his bike. I used to drive him and his buddies to the theater, which is a mile away. They walk. Transportation accounts for 50% of the Bay Area's greenhouse gases. That is higher than the state, it is higher than the national average, and is sufficiently higher than the world standard. We will not be able to innovate ourselves out of this. And I know that those of you here in Silicon Valley know that a lot can be done from innovation, and a lot can be done, but it will not get us where we need to go. And I will show you that in a slide. It will take us part of the way there, but not nearly as far as we need to go. We need to change the way we use energy and change the way we use oil. Compact development, that is focusing development in those areas where there is already existing transit or proposed planned transit near job centers. It is higher density. Jerry Brown used to say when he was mayor of Oakland that he was talking, to quote Jerry Brown, I forgot to ask, is the press here? Because I have to ask a favor of Jerry. But Jerry would talk about elegant density when he was mayor of Oakland. And everybody wanted to know, what is this elegant density? What is this notion that Jerry Brown has now? And he said he was going to build, or promote to have built 10,000 units in downtown Oakland. And everybody laughed and said, Jerry, that's not going to happen. Well, by the time he left office, actually, they built 9,000 some odd, and they'll reach to 10,000. So Jerry had an idea that worked. Compact development results in 20 to 40% reduction in what we call VMT, vehicle miles traveled, and therefore substantial reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. If we can reduce driving by 10%, carbon emissions by 40%, limit greenfield development to 900 acres a year, these are very aggressive, and increase non-auto use, we will have made major progress. We're talking about performance-based regional transportation plan. That is how well these various improvements actually perform. ABAG has promoted what we call focused priority development areas. This is a voluntary. We expected to have maybe a dozen jurisdictions that would propose these priority development areas. We received over 100. And then we have what we call the scattered success versus focused future. And there are 2 of these. I won't go through all of them, but you will see on the scattered success side, that's just continuing basically what we've been doing in the past. Under our more aggressive proposal, we would have more compact development. There'd be some growth under the old assumptions in urbanized areas, there'd be more growth in the more aggressive one. And then within cities, growth would mostly continue as projected. Within counties, growth and cities, growth would be directed toward downtown. Under our old assumptions, we continue growth in areas far from jobs. In the new one, we would put them closer to jobs. This is the slide I want you to see, and one that actually I will end with, and I hope you can see that.
If I could get this thing to work. Yes. Here. This is business as usual. If we just continue doing what we're doing, that's where we are. With major infrastructure improvements, this is our target. So business as usual, we're up here. Infrastructure improvements, we come down. Land use, very aggressive assumptions, we come here. Pricing, this is congestion pricing, we come here. Innovation, that's the technology. And then changing behavior, we finally get there. These are all very aggressive assumptions. But if we do nothing, we're up here, and that's our target. So, again, quickly, rules and expectations. We've set these greenhouse gas targets for the region. We have SB 375, sponsored by Darrell Steinberg. We have the Regional Housing Needs Allocation process, where we're trying to encourage more affordable housing in certain places and exemptions from the environmental requirements. We want to have more than a paper tiger. We hope to use carrots, and if that doesn't work, sticks, and achieve these actual reductions. What we need, money, political will, and compelling arguments to convince the public. Thank you.
Thanks again to Henry Gardner. We're going to move along now to our next speaker, and that's Arthur Jensen, who, as I said, is General Manager of Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, and they comprise 27 utilities that purchase water from the San Francisco PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, for resale to the local service areas. And when we heard Eamon Kelly speak earlier, we heard him speak about water, 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 and now we're going to find out a lot more about water. Arthur Jensen.
Good afternoon. This is a great hall, by the way. If nobody else has noticed, I think this takes me back to a high school auditorium in Richmond, California. It's no longer there. Neither am I. Water. I'm going to talk about the year 2030 with a case study. It's always good to talk about what you know best. I'm going to talk about the area that I represent. And more broadly, I'll include San Francisco. I do not represent San Francisco. I represent the agencies that buy water from them, as Michael said. But their regional water system covers 4 counties, 28 cities, water districts, water companies, Stanford University, 2.5 million people, countless businesses, hospitals, community organizations, and so on, and billions of dollars of productivity in this region. Of those 2.5 million people, 1.7 million people live outside San Francisco. 2/3 of the people that receive San Francisco's water live outside the city and county of San Francisco. A little known fact, they also they use 2/3 of the water that San Francisco provides to the Bay Area, and they pay 2/3 of the cost of that water system. Objective in real simple terms for the year 2030, it's the same objective we have for today, which is to provide a reliable supply of water for our communities. And what does that mean? What does it entail? It includes supporting smart growth, as Henry was describing, sustaining a robust economy. We do not want it to go downhill. Maintaining attractive communities, and I'll point out in a little while why I mention that specifically. And then, of course, managing within limited resources. We have to live within a budget. And it's critically important with water. You can't borrow money. You can't go into trillions of dollars of debt in the water world. It's called air when you open the faucet. So we have to succeed at that. Challenges, limited and very uncertain water supplies, increasing needs for people and for jobs, and making our infrastructure reliable. I agree with Henry saying we've got to put money into this, and money requires political will, which means these things have to rise to greater importance than anything else on the agenda. This slide shows the general area served by the San Francisco water system. This overlay shows the 28 cities, water districts, Stanford University. You can see us down here in the South Bay. And those red lines are the major pipelines that come from the Sierras and the East Bay watersheds across the Bay and up the peninsula to San Francisco. Marvelous thing about this system, built 78 years ago, is that the water flows by gravity from Yosemite National Park, where they have their flagship reservoir, Hetch Hetchy Reservoir, all the way to Fisherman's Wharf by gravity. Now, the beauty of that is if you could design a water system today, first of all, you would never build this one because you'd never build a dam in a national park today. But if you could, you'd want to, because it doesn't use any energy to move the water. The existing sources of supply for that region are various. There's local watersheds on the peninsula, the East Bay, the South Bay here in Santa Clara County. Imported water from the Sierras, San Francisco's, the Delta supplies from the state and federal projects through the Santa Clara Water District and Alameda County Water District. Groundwater, I say where it exists, it is not ubiquitous. Recycled water, a number of plants in the South Bay and on the peninsula. Brackish water desalination, which does occur over in the East Bay, in the Alameda County Water District area. And of course, conservation, which we now count as a source of supply. Even though you can't put out a fire with it, we count it. The uncertainties, environmental impacts, and the associated regulations, and decision-making. Just last month, the San Francisco PUC decided that it would take no more water out of the Tuolumne River, but limit how much it takes out of the Tuolumne River for environmental purposes. And so that is not a regulation, it was a public policy decision. Timing, it doesn't always rain when you need water. The energy used to move water around, and of course climate change. Groundwater, limited storage, you can't see it. You have multiple extractors. Groundwater is described as a checking account where everybody has a checkbook. Contamination, the energy for extraction, and of course climate change. Recycled water is generally not where you want it, unfortunately, so there are costs and energy associated with that. And then desalination, again, energy, common theme, permitting, and the disposal of the brine when you're done. So all of these supplies have problems. The customers in the area that I show you on the map have a diverse portfolio of supplies, which you can see here. Groundwater conservation, other sources, which includes the brackish desal, make up a good part of that. The largest portion, and these are projections to year 2030 that were made as part of San Francisco's program EIR, comprise about 64% of the total. The supply limitation I mentioned is until at least 2018, perhaps beyond, we don't know. So that could shrink to as low as 57% from San Francisco. What drives, let's now shift to water demand, or water need as I like to call it. What drives that? First of all, smart growth. As Henry said, this area, the sprawl is over. We're now talking infill redevelopment, employment. People need jobs. Either the people moving into the area or people growing up that are now children in this area. And there has been a changing mix of the types of industry and commercial activity in the Bay Area, which only serves to make it difficult to project water needs. If you look at a zoning map or a general plan and it says this is going to be a commercial area, you don't know if that's a 10-story building filled with people using the bathroom every 15 minutes, or if it's a public storage facility where there's one bathroom and a whole bunch of little cabinets with locks on them. Makes it very hard to project water needs, but that doesn't stop us. We have done that recently. We're now in the process of updating the projections, but these are the projections before. Between now and 2030, a 19% increase in population. If you go to the middle, a 19% increase in total demand, but population is not what's driving the demand, it's the jobs. Our per capita consumption has been going down since 1985. It will continue to go down through the year 2030. And although the population is increasing, the residential use of water is projected to be flat. It's in fact the jobs that create the need for additional water supply. So we were challenged to describe the scenarios that we wanted to see in the year 2030. What do we want to see? We want to see communities that retain their value, that continue to be attractive. We want to see economic prosperity, that means the jobs, sustainable water supplies of sufficient amounts, obviously efficient water use is how we're going to get there, and reliability, which means the water flows without interruption. Wasn't that long ago, my sister lived in Saugus, California, and there you could not get water in the afternoon because the water system was under-designed. That's not the ideal for planning for the year 2030. I'm going to stop here and say a bit about attractive communities and why I have that on the slide. Pricing is often cited as a conservation measure. I'm here to tell you that changing the price does not save a single drop of water. Pricing is an incentive. It is the behavioral changes that result from the price signal, as we've seen with gasoline. It's the behavioral changes that save water. And the easiest thing to do when the price of water goes up is to go out and turn off the irrigation. And I have elected members of my board of directors that will gladly take you on tours of their cities and show you the blighted areas where the property values are going down because people have merely responded to price by turning off the irrigation. We don't need a lot of water to have attractive communities, and that's one of the challenges. We do need money and political will. So the solutions, first of all, in the near term by 2020, don't count on building anything because you can't plan it, permit it, design it, get it built and operational in that short period of time. So we'll have to get there through increased water use efficiency and extending existing supplies like existing recycled water plants. We can do it. We're in the process of developing a water conservation implementation plan to do exactly that job. And I detest studies. I abhor plans. It's because I've made a living making them. What this particular job is, the end product is a list of who does what by when. That's a good plan. That's one that we can implement. In the long term, continue to work on efficiency, innovative supplies, innovative use of technology to save water, and then finally living within our water income. Goes back to in your home. One way to describe becoming more efficient in terms of your household budget is that you live within your means. You throw away your credit cards, and again, there are no water credit cards, so forget that idea. We have to live within our water income. That also means that we've got to survive the hard times, the droughts, the unexpected. Who's going to make this happen? Well, I don't know that I have these in the right order, but I have them. Local communities and the agencies, they have to lead by example. They have to lead through zoning and permit requirements. I think that's what Emmon would say was regulation and the bureaucracy. Regional agencies like our own, coordination, developing economies of scale, facilitating the work done by the local agencies. And one of the things we're doing in our contractual arrangements with San Francisco is to permit trading between agencies, which creates an efficiency. The state, which is good for regulations and requirements, they also are good in some ways for money. We have tried, along with other agencies in the Bay Area, to harness the grant funds associated with water, and it's at times not worth the effort. But nonetheless, you hate to see your own tax money go away, so we try desperately to get it back. Individuals changing their behavior and making investments, businesses doing the same, two of the most important things. Any form of water conservation, aside from not letting the water run as long when you brush your teeth, takes an investment of time and money. Re-landscaping your yard to use less water will not pay for itself in water savings. It will not pay for itself in water savings. It's something you do because you think you should. And it takes time, personal time. Changing out toilets, washing machines, all those things take time and investments. If you have a commercial building with lots of toilets that get flushed many times a day, it just costs more money. But it's an investment worth making. And then interest groups which provide necessary pressure and support, very important. The wild cards, the one that's not here is climate change. I figured that was just too obvious, I wasn't going to put it on. But the national and local economy, after this morning, or after the first speaker, I should put the global economy, the need to finance the increased water efficiency, avoiding unintended consequences like barren front yards with cars parked on them and property values going down. We need to avoid those things. And then finally, the last wild card is the major earthquake, which will happen with a 75% probability before the end of our planning scenario horizon. With that, I will close, and thank you very much for your attention.